Hello and welcome to another episode of the Steel Bones Amputee Pod. Today I'm joined by someone I'm genuinely thrilled to introduce, David Ball. I recently had the pleasure of meeting David and hearing him speak at a conference we both attended with Irwin Mitchell, and his story stayed with me. David is a proud father to 2 daughters in their 30s and a granddad to 5 lively grandchildren. He's also a trustee of Headway Bristol and vice chair. Originally he's from the Cotswolds, but he's now made Wales his home for the past 4 years. He has travelled all over the world. David, thank you so much for being here. I'm truly excited for this conversation. David, perhaps can you just give us a little introduction of yourself?
Yeah, of course. I'm David Ball. I'm age 62. I've been retired 12 months now. And I am what they would call a through-knee amputation today of 45 years.
Wow, brilliant. Okay, we're going to dive into some questions. You have really survived 45 years of trauma through all sorts of different ways and avenues. I know it's going to be very powerful for our listeners. So what has living through so much trauma taught you about yourself?
I think, my accident happened in 81. And I think, in credit to today, there is a lot more support available. But back in the 80s, that there wasn't. So I really have to owe my sort of the reason I'm here today to my family, my mum and dad, really, because in the 80s there was very little support in terms of trauma care or any trauma support. So I really took it that every piece of every trauma that I go through, I try and use it as a learning point to the next stage of my life. And that's quite easy words, but I would say that, some trauma can turn into a really positive message and can change your life for the better. It will never take away the fact that, I'm an amputee, but I can share that then with others based on the fact that even though mine was a long time ago and I have 45 years experience, amputees today still have the same issues that I had back in the 80s.
That is quite extraordinary. Just on that, David, what do you think have been the improvements?
I think there's a lot more focus and a lot more medical support on the after support of hospitals. I was told I was going home, the rest was down to my family. There is, it's not perfect by any means, but there is a lot more after service support when people leave the hospitals. There's also care communities and respite communities that will support amputees before they go home. Nothing like that existed back in the 80s. There is still a lot more that can be done. I think there's still a lot more that people have to pay privately for, or through a charity, which is, I don't agree with, and I think it's a real shame. But we're a lot more further forward than we've ever been. But we still need to do a lot more, and we need to get the word out there, and we need to do a lot more raising the awareness of that. Because unless it happens to you, you don't always know it exists. And this is the key for me, that, you should be able to know these things, even if you're able-bodied, but you don't. You tend to find out about them only when you've had a trauma or you've had an amputation or another accident.
Yeah, I think it's quite right, David, really, isn't it? You just don't realise the depths until you live it through family member or yourself, So before we go on to the next question, do you want to share a little bit about your brother and what happened there?
Yeah, so as I discussed a couple of weeks ago, there's a sort of 3 elements of trauma to my 45 years. There's my trauma. We sadly had another trauma last year that I lost my mum. That's a very personal trauma. But also my brother, he had a industrial accident 11 years ago. He was 55. It was one of those industrial accidents that was an absolute, wrong place, wrong time. And he had a very, very severe cognitive brain injury where he lost a third of his head. and now wears a titanium plate. And the level of support that he's had has been tremendous. And I'll say, fortunately, he won his case, and he was able to win enough funds to provide, potentially until he's 90, his rehabilitation. There's a lot of people I see in Gloucester Headway, Bristol Headway, etc., in charities where they're not that fortunate. Things like recognition, reading software, being able to have a care support on a daily basis, those things, unless they're justified through the NHS, they cost money. And unfortunately, some of our colleagues and some of the unfortunate people out there don't have that ability or that support. So although Andy had a very, very bad brain injury accident, he has been fortunate to be able to fund some of the care himself, and it's made his rehabilitation extremely successful, because on paper, he shouldn't have survived, and he shouldn't have been able to bounce back into the community in the way he has without that private support.
Yeah, absolutely. It's astounding, really, isn't it? So, David, what was your mum's name?
My mum's name is Janet.
Janet. God bless her heart.
Yeah.
You lost Janet, your mum, last year. 44 years ago, your mum, well, no, 45, sorry, but she obviously hasn't been here for the last year, but she had a call that you had been involved in an accident. You were involved in an accident?
Yeah, so on June the 5th, 1981, two policemen arrived at the door. They told my mum that her car had been taken, but the car was on the drive. They were just trying to divert her to speak to my father. It was 5 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. I was a little bit late home, so she was wondering where I was. And she was told that I was involved in a real traumatic hit and run accident with a lorry. They never found that lorry driver. I was on my way to Frenchay Hospital at the age of 17, not knowing that she would be able to get there in time, and that I would survive. Yeah.
Goodness me. And I remember you showed me some newspaper articles. You were quite a celebrity.
I was. Thank you very much, Emma. I was a bit of a celebrity. There was a time where, because it was we used to live in a small village of the Cotswolds, so news like this was big news. And on occasions, I'd have the same photographer almost follow me around as I, came out of hospital, as I had my amputation, as I learned to drive, as I went back to work. There's a number of photographs that you would have had the pleasure of seeing. Today I would be, probably, if it was happening today, I would be classed as a celebrity, but it was in our own town, if that makes sense.
Yeah, very much so. And if we just think of your mum and your dad, 45, had this terrifying journey to hospital for you. Thank God you survived. And then years ago, a second son.
Yeah.
Really?
Well, my parents instantly went from their coloured hair to their grey hair with the shock.
Yeah, I'm sure.
They helped me survive and cared for me until I went back to work.
Wow.
And then, 11 years ago, she almost lost her second son through industrial accident. I mean, you really couldn't write it. And, he survived. We must just have this inner willingness to, just keep going. We've certainly used our 9 lives for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Did your mum and your dad ever share how do they get through those difficult times?
My parents were very, my mum, bless her, but my dad's 93, they're very old school, treat people as you'd like to be treated, everything can be resolved. It's just when, and somebody knows the answer out there, but you just have to find the person that knows that answer. They've always said, we started this journey together as a family, so we're going to end the journey as a family, and even when my brother was in ICU at the time, he was within 12 hours of not surviving. We'd already been there 12, 13 hours. And my dad said to the family, we arrived together, we wait. We will
Oh,
all wait through the night, and we'll wait for the news, whether it's good news or bad news. We're going to wait. So
oh,
he was very, very.
yeah, and rightly so. That is just incredible. So, since your brother has been injured, you have been his advocate. Am I right? Is that the right word?
Yeah.
Really?
So that day he had his accident, I was driving back up from Southampton. It's only an hour and a half, but it seemed like hours and hours
Oh,
because
I
you want to
bet.
get somewhere very quickly. At the time, it was recommended that they have a spokesman of one person for the family, and nobody really wanted to do it. And I guess because of my background and because I'd gone through my accident and I didn't
Yeah.
really have anybody like that at the time, I sort of knew what was required, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I volunteered to be his litigation friend, and
That's
now, as it turns out, I'm now his power of attorney. So I've sort of, as a brother, and I'd like to share with you, it's quite difficult sometimes because sometimes you have to make a decision that's a litigation decision, but you
yeah.
also want to make a decision that you're his brother.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
very complex
I
relationship.
bet. Mm.
So I've been his sidekick, if you like, for the 11 years that he's been all the way through the journey.
That's big, isn't it? It's a
Yeah,
lot. Well,
yeah,
considering all the stuff. And I remember you sharing that your brother was told he's doing something now that he was told he could.
yeah. So not
Yeah,
and Andrew, when he went into hospital, he could not walk, talk, feed. He had a feed peg.
that's right.
And they really said to him, "You'll probably never walk again. You'll probably never be able to do fishing. Do hobbies, do things you did before." In the true spirit, he's proved them all wrong. And I'm not saying it is perfect. He does a lot of things that he could do before, but he also does some things that he never did before that he does now.
Wow.
Yeah, so he's a very, very personality is very different, and he's a
Mm-hmm.
very different person, but he's great. He's great. He's a very go happy sort of person. He lives independently with a carer that visits 5 days a week, and they've retaught him to do fishing. He does woodwork. He does pottery. He does cooking.
It's
You know,
incredible, David.
he doesn't. It's incredible how he survived, but
Yeah.
thank
And he's
God he
living
did.
his life, isn't he? And I'm sure you told me that he and his carer go away on little trips.
They
Like,
do. So they go for a 4-day fishing trip, and they stay in a lodge next to a lake. And one of the people down there that teach him to go fishing, is interestingly paraplegic. He invested
wow,
his money into a lake and a fishing organization to
gosh,
teach disabled people that couldn't fish anymore. So
gosh.
it's a real journey of investment in disability that gives people their hobbies back, but their life back.
Yeah, I mean, what a beautiful way to sit. It's just, it will do him so much good and his soul to just be out in the nature.
Yeah.
I love that. So that litigation friend, you've spoken a bit about that, but how has the amputation affected your caring for someone with significant needs as well, albeit acting as their litigation friend? How does that
Yeah,
impact?
so I think because I had the amputation, I think I'd gone through the years of because I didn't they didn't find the driver, I didn't get an award, I didn't get any compensation. All my drive has been from the heart, if you like.
Yeah,
It really helped me. It's a really strange one, Emma, to say really that my trauma helped my brother with his trauma because I knew what I never had,
yeah,
amputation or brain injury. When you go through a trauma, you need to try and find a way through life and really create a new life for yourself. And because I did it unsupported and aided, in some respects, it was easier for Andrew because money wasn't an object, but I knew what he wanted because I'd been through that journey myself.
yeah.
So my disability helped my brother's
Mm.
disability in terms of I knew I could do it. So on the assumption of that and his willingness, he could do it as well.
Yeah, I'm sure that's what also spurred the family on. We have
Yes.
been here, whilst it's not fair and wish it had never happened to either of you, but we have been here. We have
Yes.
overcome this, and we will work together and overcome this. And just incredible. Yeah, that spirit is, yeah, very special, David. Very, very special. So, what do you think most people misunderstand about long-term trauma? Because that is half a century, David.
It is a long time, and I think for people that will be listening to the podcast, is that I think trauma can creep upon you.
Mhm.
So I think trauma comes in stages. So I'll give you a good example. I had my accident and my first trauma experience in 1981. It actually didn't impact me until 83.
Yeah.
You know, I was young, I got on with life, and it's the most strangest things that happen that can trigger that trauma impact. I happened to be walking across a playing field on a Friday afternoon, and a football came towards me, and I naturally went to kick it and fell down because I didn't think.
Yeah.
And that's when I realized that I would have to embrace this disability and the trauma situation for the rest of my life. I want to encourage people to say, well, if you don't feel you're impacted at the beginning,
Uh-huh.
as you go through the journey, you'll get times where it will impact you.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how many times you have to reach out for support and people. Doesn't matter. You're not being, you're not being intrusive. You're not being annoying. You're not getting in anybody's way. Please never be frightened, whether it's to a family member, whether it's to a charity, whether it's to an organization or just a friend. Just have those conversations, because I found in the early years I never had many people to talk to apart from your parents.
Yeah.
And I would have definitely benefited, Emma, from talking to organizations or to family and friends, or to, even in the 80s, you never came across many people that were amputees. Now you see them around it all the time.
Yeah.
3 or 4 wearing shorts. You can see
Yeah.
they've had an amputation, and it's quite interesting. For the first 40 years, I never wore shorts. Please never change anybody, and be yourself, and be proud that you've got an amputation and you've got a prosthesis. Specifically nowadays, they're a lot more cosmetically not aware. In the early days, I had a bar with 4 bolts. Now it's very, very
Wow.
technically
For
driven.
David, for a 17-year-old as well, at 17, you must have been getting ready to enjoy the nightlife, if not
Yeah,
already
yeah,
enjoying it.
yeah, yeah,
you
yeah,
know, you'd it's a big thing, isn't it? Well, massive for
yes,
anyone,
it is.
and
Yeah,
particularly at that age when there
and
weren't so many
you,
people.
you're
You
right,
know?
Emma. And the one thing I would encourage people to do is, I firmly believe I missed out on life between 17 and 21 when I went
Yeah,
back to work. What I would
yeah,
say to people now is, you don't have to. On reflection, I would not have. That whether it's 12 months after, 6 months after, 18 months after, please reach out and get back into normal life as fast as possible, because there's a lot of people with the evolution of the amputee technology and the amputee sector and the charities that are out there. Use them and reach out to them. They're fantastic. And I know we met for the first time,
yeah.
a few weeks ago.
No,
I didn't know Steel Bones existed.
no.
You're a fantastic charity,
Oh, thank
and
you, David.
embrace it. Really embrace it.
Yeah. Well, I loved meeting you. So I'm so grateful, really. And it's so powerful for people to hear that, David, particularly over 45 years, that extended trauma, and then to go through that with your brother and lose, your mum. It's an awful lot, I think, for people. And it's just so people will so relate to what you're saying. They really, really will. When that moment on the playing field, what you realized this is different, what did you do? Did you hit rock bottom? How did you, what?
Yeah, I hit rock bottom.
Yeah,
I went into recluse. I closed myself down. I went back home. I went through a period of time where I wouldn't go out. To go out for 5 minutes, I just thought it wasn't worth it. I thought it was almost as if thousands of people had seen me fall down on
yeah,
that day. when it was one or two people, but one or two people when you're in a traumatic state can seem like 1,000 people. But I spoke to my parents a lot, and that's why I encourage people to, if you can't talk to your family, if you can't talk to your parents, talk to your charity, talk to people that reach out to people like us. I did bounce back, but being honest, it took me 3 or 4 months, Emma, to come back up from that.
Awesome.
Because I think that one instance was the accumulation of the last 3 years of that point.
Completely.
And that's why it took it so hard,
And we see that so much,
Very
there's
much so,
so
yeah.
many people who are just like, I can't leave my house. And it is a build up. You've put that stoical, brave, I'm fine. This is going to be great. And I've seen it with children who suddenly have an operation and attempt to go back to school, and they are just totally, their peers realise they are so different. Not that everybody is different, but they just see it so so yeah, it's a big thing. Yeah.
It is.
What actually helped you to get back out talking?
Yeah, so
Mum sounds like a bit of and your dad sounds like a bit of heroes.
certainly me mum and me dad and me nan at that time. But what I
Oh.
did is I went. I wasn't due to go back to work at that time, but I went and saw my company that I work for, and I started to talk to them way before I was ready to go back. Almost a preparation to get back out to life and start doing things again. Because if you wait for that time, you're just contemplating in your mind that you can't do it. And so I started talking to them, and I also joined our local youth club at that time.
Wow.
And started getting back out into the community
Very brave
and started
for that age,
talking
David.
with the community more than the family. Because I think I also had a reflection that it's only my family that knows this. I need to talk to others to get a different perspective. So sometimes the family is good, but also it's good to talk to a perspective of somebody else's view. And I'll give you a couple of examples. I belong to a couple of amputee groups, and I see the chats there where they still have problems like I used to years ago. And I felt as well, even at my age and after 45 years, that you can still add value by well, I had that back in 80. This is what you do. There's still some value in our experiences that we can still add in now, future, and beyond. And I'm a firm believer as well that no question is every question is a good question, and every question deserves an answer. And the answer might be a real small one. I'll give a good example. I used to have some sores, and I used a barrier cream now, and if people don't know that, they're going to get sores, So there's a lot of information out there that can help amputees not just get into the community, but make your time walking on your limb and out in the community, sore free or comfortable, because that's equally as important. If you've got confidence with your limb, it will give you confidence when you're out in the community. If you find you haven't got the confidence in your limb, then that's going to transpose into your behavior and not have confidence when you go out to the community. So I think also I would encourage people that, if you're comfortable with your prosthesis, great. If you're not, go and see your local prosthesis where you go. Please encourage yourselves to get it comfortable, because a comfortable limb will make you comfortable and more confident in yourself.
Yeah, excellent advice. And don't give up hope, because sometimes it can take some time to find the best comfort socket, can't it?
Totally. And sorry, Emma, just going back to your conversation, and I remember at 18 sitting on the edge of my bed and saying, well, how am I going to do this for the next 3 years? Let alone 45.
Well,
but you do. You take each day and you do work through it. And before you know it, you're going through 5 years, and then 10-year anniversary, then 20-year anniversary. And before you know it, you're 45 years in,
Yeah, 45 years. I guess half a century. It's incredible. It is absolutely incredible. And David, I'm right in thinking you worked abroad as well, didn't you?
I did. So when I went back to work, I worked for a company locally, but then I joined a company called British Aerospace, which are now Airbus UK Limited. And overall, I worked for them for 39 years.
Wow.
And when I first arrived at that company in 87, they didn't have many disabled people.
I'm sure not.
They
Yeah.
they didn't have many. I think I was the second limbless person in Airbus at that time.
Gosh.
And
Wow.
they said to me, "You can come and work for us, but you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this. You won't be able to work abroad. You won't be this." And because if somebody says I can't do it, that drives me on to do it more. So I travelled all over the world. I worked in Seville in Spain for 2 years. I ran a operations facility for them. And I literally worked on live aircraft, and I did everything that they said in 1987 that I couldn't do. And I did that over the 15, 25 years the first 25 years that I was there. And I carried on doing it and went into suppliers, traveled all over the world, multiple airports, bleepers going off with the leg and all that.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'd rather say to them, well, okay, tell me why I can't do it then.
Yeah. I love
Yeah.
I love that.
Don't give me 50 reasons why I
I
can't do it.
can't.
Give me one reason why I can do it,
Yeah,
because I'll solve
absolutely.
that reason.
Yeah, I love that. When you were going traveling on airports and through the security, any tips that you could share with people?
I know nowadays you can get cards, little cards that tell the airport staff
Yeah.
that you've got an amputation or a letter from your hospital, or is always useful to carry, because sometimes they offer, or they want to do a physical check, and nobody wants to go into a room with a couple of staff
No.
and have a physical check.
No.
So equally over the years, they're well aware of people coming in through, whether it's pins and plates in their arms, or whether it's
Yeah.
prosthesis, or whatever it might be. But I always, as I approach, when I check in, I always say, and when I go in the queue for putting my baggage through, I
Yeah.
always tell them,
Right.
and
Good
I
tip.
always say to them, I don't just say I've got a through knee amputation. I say, look, it's my right leg, it's through knee, and it
Yeah.
will allow your bleepers to go off, and it will show up on the scan. And I think they appreciate that as well. You're not being difficult. And I always do that, and it does sort of smooth the way, if you like, a little bit. Yeah, it does work. It does help. So be open and honest. Don't be embarrassed. Everybody should be proud if they're unfortunate to have an accident and it ends in being an amputee. Then it's a proud thing, not a non-proud thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I won't take you too much longer. Just one
That's okay.
last question. What do you wish someone had said to you earlier on? What do you wish you know? What do you know now that you wish you knew back then?
I think specifically when you're young, and I'm not saying it's any easier when you're older. People, as I did, you feel your life's been cut short, even though you're
Yeah.
alive. You've had a massive trauma. I wish somebody had said to me, it doesn't change you as a person. As in, just because you've got a limb missing, doesn't make you any less whole. You are still a human being. You're still a person, and you will develop a strong mannerism to be able to cope with it. But you don't get that day one. You have to almost mature into that. And then you become a mature amputee, opposed to this frightened, scared young person that
Yeah.
you think the world you can't live in the world with it as an amputee. Also, naively, Emma, which is interesting, I probably thought I was the only amputee because
I
it
think
happened
people.
to me. But when you actually look at
I know.
the stats and the KPIs around the numbers of amputees, it's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Things like, the Paralympics is massive now. The Winter Olympics
Yeah.
is massive now. None of that was
It wasn't there, was
no
it?
awareness years ago. So as much as it changes your physicals, I actually believe I'm a better person now than I probably would have been if I hadn't gone through a trauma. I think going through a trauma, and this is going to sound really, really strange, is going through a trauma can make you a special person, and actually can
Absolutely.
make you a better person, because you don't get to experience those things by reading a book. They're real life experiences, and to be able to change somebody else's life through opportunity is a powerful thing.
Yeah, David, we did this podcast because it is, as soon as I heard David speak, I was like, everyone needs to hear his experiences and what he has to say, celebrating Limb Loss, Limb Difference Awareness Month. And I know in the mix of that, we've talked about Headway and the incredible work that they do, and obviously your brother Andrew and everything that he's endured, and the spirit of your parents, just that, we will get through this. There is no other choice. We are
No, there
going
isn't.
to do this.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I just think that's such a powerful thing to hear and to close our celebrations of Limb Loss, Limb Difference Awareness Month, which I'm sure wasn't even a thing 45 years ago.
No, it wasn't. I don't even think at those times there was the Limbless Association.
Yeah,
It was there, based on the Douglas Bader
yeah,
story.
yeah.
But now it's everywhere. You can do kayaking, you can do wall climbing, you
I
can
know.
do. There's so much now that's available that, but also I still think there's some real benefits on listening to these types of stories of people that have
Yeah,
been amputees for such a long time. For
absolutely.
the people that are just starting off, try and embrace it and really, really reach out and talk to people. I didn't on every occasion, and I think that's when it does affect you and it does suppress you as a person. But
Yeah,
there is a lot more opportunity, a lot more organizations and charities exist today that can help you a lot earlier than it helped me.
yeah. Well, I know because you have already, renewed every time I hear it, you speak, David, you renew my sense of hope. You really do. And I know people listening will get a huge amount. And you're so humble that you don't, you are just you. I was so privileged to hear you speak and to have you on our podcast as a guest. I can't thank you enough. Thank you for
Pleasure.
marking this special awareness month with us. I look forward to speaking to you again soon.
Okay, thanks very much, and really appreciate the time. Thanks, Emma.